Hello, everyone, and welcome to Executive Encore. This is the podcast where women who are navigating the next chapter of their lives love to tune in and watch my guests and hear their stories. I am your host, Patricia, and it's my honor to be here with you today. Executive Encore is the space where we explore the journeys of women who are redefining success on their terms and making a profound impact after their corporate lives or after their careers. We believe at Executive Encore that your Encore years are an opportunity for incredible growth, for purpose, and for transformation. And we're here to provide the inspiration and support that you need to thrive. So today, I'd love to introduce to you Ellen Benfadi, who is an author, artist, storyteller, and the founder of The Awakening Story. Ellen embodies the spirit of transformation, having navigated her own powerful journey from a place of feeling lost to one of profound self-discovery and purpose. Through her creative work, Ellen helps others find their own voice and heal through the power of art and storytelling. Her journey is a testament to the idea that it's never too late to connect with the truest self and to create a life filled with meaning. I'm so thrilled to have her here to share her wisdom. Ellen, welcome to Executive Encore.
Hi, Patricia. I'm very grateful to be here today. I'm excited to be here and share.
Yeah, we've had some great chats, so I know a lot's going to come out of this conversation. We're so glad that you can join us. Your work is deeply inspiring, especially your focus on transformation through creativity. And that's one of the areas where many women go to after a corporate life. They may bring back an interest that they had on what we call the back burner from when they were young and bring it forward. Sometimes it's easy to find that, and other times it could be a struggle. So let's start there. You often speak about your own journey of transformation. Can you tell us about the moment you realized that art and storytelling were not just passions for you, but powerful tools for your own healing and awakening? How did you begin to integrate them into your life to create such significant change?
Well, in all honesty, I was very surprised by the artistic side that kind of just erupted in me. I was going through a very difficult time in my life. I was going through a transition, and I had decided to take some courses. And during one of the courses that I was taking, I had a profound experience of a vision that I had. And I write about it in my book, so the viewers can read that and read all about it and get all the nice juicy details. But basically, I walked away from that experience, and it was such a surprise to me, and I didn't know how to communicate it. I didn't know that I was a storyteller, so writing it. I thought about writing it, but I was a banker and I was on the computer a lot. And I thought, I don't really want to be on the computer writing about this really profound experience I had. So I just decided that I would try to draw it, paint it, like put it on paper. And so I went and I bought some watercolors, Crayola watercolors to be exact, like at a Save-On or a Walgreens, pharmaceutical, little shop. And I went home and I started just trying to do these watercolors of what I had experienced. And it was very childlike. And as my awakening continued to blossom, I continued to have similar experiences. I was having very lucid dreaming. I was having in meditations, I would have these visions, and I thought, I'm just going to try to paint them. So eventually I got canvas and I started painting, and it was something that erupted out of me that I couldn't say no to it, if that makes any sense. It almost overtook me in a way, and it became the way that I communicated what I was going through. And it was really for my own enjoyment. it wasn't to, become an artist, and, it was
Mhm.
just a way for me to navigate what I was experiencing in a very creative way.
Mm. What a beautiful illustration of how creativity erupted, okay,
Mhm.
from you, to unlock parts of yourself. And I'm sure that can happen with many other people too, without the intention of becoming an artist. It can just erupt like that. For women in our audience who feel disconnected from their creative side, where it might
Mhm.
be a little more difficult after decades of in a structured corporate environment, which you would have been as a banker for sure,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
What's a simple first step that they can take using art or maybe writing as a form of self exploration?
I think the very first step is not to judge yourself.
Mm,
And that doesn't sound very creative, but
mm,
to explore the things that you enjoy and to allow yourself just to be playful like a child. Like, I gravitated to watercolors because it it took me back to being a young child, and it was something
mhm,
that I could relate to. So I think the very first step is to be aware that it's a playful thing. It's not, sometimes when we're in the corporate structure, it's like, okay, now I'm going to go do this, right? And I'm going to learn how to do it, and I'm going to, master it. And it's not about that. With the creative process, it's really about allowing yourself to just be in the moment of creating something and
mhm,
reflecting upon that afterwards, and just enjoying how it makes you feel while you're doing it. So I would say the very first step is not to judge, when these ideas come in, not to judge them and just go with the flow with it.
mhm. That was interesting. I remember you telling me a story of where, yes, you were not judging, but someone was seeing just how um, I don't know whether the word skillful, or just how your creativity was erupting. And so that I would imagine that experience helped you to even put the self judgment away even more and just expand on your creativity once you got that comment on your artwork, right?
Well, I think that in the very beginning, it was there was this desire to create, and then there was the ego that told me, this is silly, this is stupid, like, this is a waste of time, because I was so career oriented and money making oriented that when I took time to do what was coming out of me, the ego would come in and try to distract me from doing that, because it's unproductive.
Mhm, mhm.
And
But
so
big impact. I want to say some people may think it's unproductive, but big impact. Like your
exactly.
artwork
So the
is
ego can
amazing.
make you think. Your own psyche can be like, this is a waste of time. You should be doing something that matters, right?
Yeah.
And so it wasn't, even though I was having this eruption, I still had that tug of war inside of me of, should I be spending this much time on this? I could be getting more loans. I could be knocking on more doors,
Course,
right? I could be making more phone calls.
yeah.
And I think that that's another first step, is that to allow yourself the time, but then to embrace that, and know that this is the most valuable thing that you can do for yourself.
For yourself, yeah.
For
Mhm.
yourself. This is about yourself.
Yeah.
And through that creative process, as you get to know yourself more intimately and more deeply, the way that you approach life changes. The way that you approach business changes. The way you approach your children and your family and your friends. I mean, it's almost like you rework your wiring, your inner
Mhm,
wiring,
mhm,
because so much comes out. And I remember in the very beginning, this is coming to my mind. This is, me struggling with, and I kept feeling intuitively, I'm supposed to be doing this creative process. Nobody told me to do it. It was, like I said, erupted, and I'm arguing and I'm saying this is a waste of time and all of that. And then eventually when the banking industry crashed, I got a grant to go back to school from the state of California. And I took advantage of that grant. And I was going to go into be a paralegal, right? I'm looking at all these things that are going to make me money, right? Like a real skill. And one of the things I thought that I wanted to do was be like a drug abuse counselor. I thought that might be good. And they said to me that if I wanted to do that, I had to go on mock interviews. To get the money to do that, I had to go on mock interviews and secure a future job. So I started going on these mock interviews. And I finally got a hold of one gal. I think we might have talked about this before. It's brilliant. And I was talking to her and I thought, I'm going to go to La Jolla. That's like where the money is. So if I'm going to be, a 12-step counselor, I'm going to be in where the money is. Well, I started talking to her on the phone and she says, are you an addict? And I said, no. And I said, but I'm codependent. I told her all my story. And she goes, well, we would never hire you. And I said, why? And she said, because you haven't gone through a 12-step, so you're not going to be able to relate. And she said, so, what else is there that you can choose? Because she really connected with me. And I said, well, there's legal and there's this and there's that. And I said, and there's this one thing called the creative process. And I started painting a couple years ago. And I was thinking that might be kind of cool. And she goes, well, it's free money. Do what you would enjoy. And so I chose the creative process. It wasn't until I got into that coursework that I realized what I had been doing on my own without any education, without any mentoring, was completely organic, but it was completely the creative process. Mm-hmm. And it was at that moment that when I really began to understand that whatever was happening within me was significant. Mm-hmm. And that's when I decided that, I would embrace it.
So this was your awakening. And I believe your work now is to guide others through what you call the awakening story. This sounds deeply personal. I wouldn't say 12-step, but it's still very deeply personal, mm-hmm. right? And very multi-layered process. Could you talk us through some of the different stages of awakening that you have identified and through your experience and your work with others? What does that journey typically look like?
So I'm going to go off how I experienced it, and it could be different for other people. But my awakening came through trauma. So I had a lot of traumatic events that were happening simultaneously in my life. And I write about it in my book. That, there's different gateways to awakening that you can, research and find out about. But, mine came through trauma. And during that awakening was when the creativity came in, and I started reaching out to, I had found a Reiki master teacher in my hometown. She started to work with me with my chakras. I was listening to Eckhart Tolle, Wayne Dyer, Esther and Jerry Hicks came on the scene. So I was really seeking outside of the norm because of what happened to me spontaneously. I was reaching for, where's this coming from? Yeah. Right. Okay. And so when the veil thins through awakening, like the illusions of our life that we've created, the illusion that we're living, when that veil thins and our true identity begins to peek through, it's very profound. And that's the first step, is understanding that you are going through an awakening process. When you are looking at your life and you're like, I don't feel the same in this life anymore. And that's kind of like transferring from corporate into that next phase, right? Mm-hmm. I don't fit in this lane anymore. Right. I can't wear this outfit anymore.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it just kind of overtakes you. And you start to realize you're not who you thought you were. That's the first step. The second step is to surrender to that. And that's what I call going into the cocoon process. So if we're looking at, like my books about that, the metamorphosis from the caterpillar to the cocoon, we're going through life as a caterpillar. One day we start to realize, I'm not okay just being a caterpillar. And then all of a sudden the DNA is activated in the caterpillar, and the caterpillar just starts to know that it needs to go find a branch to build its little sleeping bag. And that's kind of like what I'm talking about. You just kind of know, and then you have to surrender to that. You have to allow that metamorphosis to happen. Some people call that the dark night of the soul. That's when, I call it digging up the bones in a way, because it's almost like your ability to control collapses. It's like you can keep trying to wear that same old outfit, but nothing's working anymore. And so you have to surrender, and you have to allow that process to happen. And for everyone, it's a little bit different how long that takes. I feel like I was a slow bloomer. Like I felt like I was going through surrendering for so long.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. And I actually feel like I'm just now coming into the third stage, which is embodiment, stepping out, and you've gone through all that inner work, and now you're actually an embodiment of it, which means you are actually living it. So, and then from that is the next, which is ascension. And I think that I thought it was just awaken, ascend, at one point. And I started to realize through that surrendering that when I finally felt like I had come into the next phase, I was like, I feel really different. Like, I feel really different. Compassion became important to me. Humility became important to me. Service became important to me.
That's interesting.
And
So
that's embodiment.
yeah, so your values evolved as you were
Yes.
going through that as well, from another phase to this new phase. Yeah, that breaking it down in stages like that makes the process feel more navigable. Like you're able to navigate it. And I love that you said you felt like you were in it a long time, because I I think a lot of us think that we can make a transition just like that. Just make a couple of changes in our life, quick fix, that sort of thing, right?
I thought that for me too. I did in the
Yeah.
beginning. I thought, oh, I got this, because I did everything
Well,
fast.
there's times when you do have it, right? But then sometimes you fall back a bit, and then you've got to come back to that
Right.
point
Yeah.
again. And I know many of our listeners are in major life transitions, not just leaving corporation. A lot of other things happen around that time as well. And it often triggers a phase of questioning that is self reflection. But also, there can be um, uh, some drop in self-regard, like questioning, doubt, and that sort of thing, right?
Mhm.
So to know that that is part of the process is comforting to people. In your experience, what is the most challenging stage of the awakening for women in their encore years? Okay, so they're leaving a corporation. And what advice do you have for moving through it with grace?
Well, I think the most difficult is really the surrendering
Hmm.
to the art of allowing, I call it. The ability to just surrender like not control anything, not feel like you have to fix anything, or change anything, but
Or
just to
worry about anything. Don't
exactly,
worry because you don't have it. Yeah, yeah.
exactly.
Mhm.
And that is probably, if you're, if you're a woman who's a high achiever and you've structured your whole life that that's your identity, to be successful, to be a high achiever, um, to surrender to the not knowing. Because women that are successful or career oriented, they want to know all the details. They want to fix it all. They want to know, right? That, at least I'm speaking for me. I want to know. And I think the most difficult thing is that creativity or stepping into something new and evolving into something new, emerging into something new, it takes trust, and it takes the ability to just allow it to unfold without. There are times that I felt like I blocked things because I wasn't in control, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I didn't have the ability to allow it. So I was trying to run ahead, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
And because it worked that way in the corporate world, I'm going to take that model and I'm going to do it in this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what
Yeah.
I learned is that it doesn't work that
Yeah.
way
It's what we know, right? And it's been ingrained in us for so
for so
decades.
long.
That yeah, it is a challenge for sure. So I always ask my guests to come up with a talking point about something that is controversial within their work or within their lives. And you spoke about the word empowerment and how it's so overused today. But we'd like to hear what your perspective is. It seems to connect directly with deeper and more personal form of healing. So, how do you define true empowerment, and how does it differ from the surface level confidence that so many people celebrate in our professional culture?
Well, the first thing I want to highlight about, empowerment, for my generation, or the way that I perceived myself as a successful woman, was that um, I had to be strong.
Hmm.
And that meant that I couldn't be vulnerable. And I had to always put on a brave face. And I think that that empowerment culture has taught women, and I can remember my mom even saying things to me, that we need to just be strong and keep going, right?
Hmm.
And we don't take the time in this culture, when it's set up that way, to allow ourselves to grieve losses throughout our life.
Such
It's
as, such
such
as,
as, an example, a parent dies and you're in the middle of your career, and there's not enough time to actually grieve the loss of your parent,
mhm,
right?
yeah,
Um,
and
that's just one example. What about the example of women who grieve the loss of having to go back to work and leave their infant with
yeah,
caretakers?
another one.
That's a really big one. And at the time that we're doing it as young mothers, I don't think we really realize the impact it has on our nervous
No,
system,
no, no.
on our entire in our entire organism is affected by it. And I think that we carry hidden, um, maybe guilt and shame around that isn't ever spoken, because I know how I felt, when I left my children, and, like, I wish I could be 5 people, but I couldn't. So, uh, I think that that's a really big point, that women are pushed to be strong, either from their own inner, what they believe, or society, however you wanna look at it, to achieve. We have to be able to do it all. Remember that commercial, "Fry it up in the pan and do
Yep.
all the" what was that?
Bring home the bacon. Yeah,
Fry
and
it up in a pan and still love your man, like.
yeah, and such as, which is very, uh, how do I say this? It's what the women going through this executive encore, what they are experiencing, and that's the loss of their self identity, or their identity as
Right.
being a high achiever in a corporation.
Mhm.
When they leave that corporation, they say, "Now what?" And if they're not
Mhm.
prepared for it, they they will still go to functions and give their old title, right? Or
Right?
or they will go, and I heard of one where the woman just would not leave. She kept on going back to the corporation and said, "Can I water the plants?" because she just could not let go of that identity. So I love how you spoke about empowerment, because it's another one of those things that women are it's an encouraging word for women, but it can also be um, double-edged sword, right?
Mhm,
So because that's the what you were talking about takes the distinction. It shifts from the focus of external validation
mhm,
to our internal alignment, right?
mhm.
And as you guide women to uncover their stories and to heal, what is the most profound shift you've seen in them?
Oh, I have to think for a moment about that. I think,
Well, let me add this. How does this deep, authentic empowerment, rather than
mhm.
the surface level empowerment, change the way they approach their lives and their work, if they're still doing some work, and more importantly, the purpose in their next chapter?
I think the most profound thing that I've seen is they slow down. They're
Hmm.
not in a hurry.
Nice. Nice.
And that is that is true power. To be
Hmm.
able to be still in your own body, to be
Hmm.
able to be present with yourself, um, to not need to always be in interaction with the world, with your device, with your, partner, taking that time for yourself. But really, the most profound thing that I've seen is when women slow down, because my greatest thing that I got in the beginning of my journey that came to me in meditation one time is know thyself, know thy neighbor. And I was told that. And it was like, wow, I don't even know who I am.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
Sometimes
when
we
you take the time to get to know who you are through this process, and the creative process is a great way to do it,
don't. Hmm.
you begin to see yourself in a completely new way,
Hmm.
and your edges soften. Everything softens. And in that softness becomes stillness. And in that stillness, we can then redefine our core values, and we can also create a new path. But it really does take that slowing down and to be still. And
Hmm.
I think that that is the most profound. And I have to give a shout out to my sister right now, because she just sent me a picture that she painted the other night, and she's never sat down and painted, and it was brilliant. And she
Yeah.
said, "You're rubbing off on me." So it
Oh
was
boy.
really great, and that was a great compliment, you know what I
Great
mean?
compliment.
It's
Yeah.
like, yeah. And
Yeah.
so that's it in a nutshell.
That's great.
Slowing down. And when they slow down, that is then I know it's clicking, and
Wait,
that's the biggest shift.
when you made me think about, when we do slow down, there's almost like a power within that we have for ourselves, right?
Mhm.
Whereas if we're still rushing about, we're giving our power away in so many areas,
Mhm.
and we don't have the same for ourselves. So I, I'd love to, I'm going to start looking at that word empowerment, because we do use it so much, especially in encouraging young business owners, women business owners, right? Empowering them. Um, Really, it's about them finding the power within themselves, right? And to do that, they need to be still. They need to
It
be
is in a
quiet.
very still place
Yeah,
that you
yeah,
find that. And
yes.
yeah,
This has been very enlightening. You had me thinking there for a few minutes about some of these words that we use, right? And for
mhm,
sharing your journey, and your incredible insights. This has been amazing. The key takeaways for me is about, actually, the one real strong one is about that inner power that we have if we slow down. I think
mhm.
that's the one I'm going to, think more about for myself as well, because from the time that we're young in our career, and if we do have children, it's all rush, 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 right?
It
So
is.
time to slow down. Don't worry about if you're slowing down, because somebody asked me today, about slowing down. Now, it's almost a trigger sometimes. You don't want people to know that you're slowing down, but there's a good side to slowing down. And as a wise woman, we need to explain that, yeah, that there's a good thing around that, right? So,
Mhm.
Ellen, as I ask all my podcast guests, when was there one defining moment for you when you realized that you wanted to remaster your life and your work? Could you tell a bit more about your story there?
I think I've realized it many times over the last 2 decades.
Hmm.
Uh, I think that the most important time was about 20 years ago at the beginning.
Hmm.
And I realized that I could no longer continue to uh, continue going in the way that I was going and truly be happy.
Hmm.
And it would, and I knew that it's like a fork in the road, right? Where you have to, it was one of those moments where I just had
Crossroads.
to choose.
Hmm.
And I would say when I chose myself, it
Okay.
was that moment when I chose myself. I chose what was best for me in spite of what the culture would say, what my friends would say, what my family would say, what my colleagues would say. Uh, and that was the most pivotal moment. And I think that there's often times in our lives where we have those moments where we have to make that choice. But it would be at the very beginning of my journey, and I think it was probably when I picked up that watercolor brush.
Lovely. That's great. So thank you for that. I just want to speak to our incredible audience before we leave. Thank you for joining us again for this episode of Executive Encore. We hope this conversation, like the others, have inspired you to be intentional about the steps that you're going to take in your Executive Encore journey. You can connect with Ellen through links in the show notes. Okay, they will be there, and you can see some on the ticker on the bottom if you're watching YouTube. You can see notes in Spotify and in the Apple Podcasts. For subscribers and members of the Executive Encore Network for Women, watch for Ellen's feature throughout this week. I'll be writing a blog, and then the newsletter on February 1st will have a link to a special VIP offer from Ellen. And regardless, everyone needs to go onto Ellen's website. It's absolutely gorgeous. You can see her art there, and it is very inspiring for women. To subscribe to the network, you'll see, to the newsletter, you will see the Q code up in the corner on YouTube. You can use your camera to download an opt-in form there. And when you do subscribe, you also get access to other offers from other podcast guests. You'll be able to read this week's blog where I will be featuring Ellen, stretching out some of these concepts, especially the empowerment one. Please add your comments to the blog and to the YouTube and Spotify. Ellen and I will be watching for your comments, and we'll be so happy to see that you're using your voice to tell us what you're thinking about our conversation, and we will reply. For more resources, and to join the conversation, you can visit my website at patriciamuir.com. You can see that on the screen if you're watching YouTube. You can follow me on LinkedIn, and you can contact me anywhere on the internet if you'd like to know more information about the benefits and becoming a founding member of the Executive Encore Network for Women. This is a membership and a community of women who are proving that every day their best chapters are being rewritten, and it's never too late. So remember, this is your Executive Encore. This is where it begins. This is where you start to live, work, and lead differently, maybe with more creativity and more slowing down, more self trust, definitely, healthy boundaries, and a healthy mindset. Until next time, take care of yourself, do what's best for you, and don't jeopardize what you've built for yourself. Bye bye.